And I thank Mr. Graves for leading the floor tonight on this very important matter. But he joins me, I'm sure, in saying that we are all extremely disappointed that we have to come to the floor tonight and that the Supreme Court today ruled that the Commerce Clause does not support the individual mandate, but that it may be upheld anyway within Congress's power. How? Well, to lay and collect taxes. So what we have found out today is that Congress cannot use the Commerce Clause to compel you to do something, but instead Congress can tax you into submission instead. It should have been crystal clear that the Commerce Clause, which grants power to Congress to provide free trade pacts among the states, could not use that clause to regulate it. If Congress cannot force you to purchase a product, then there's nothing government cannot force you to do. This would have been a violation of your individual liberties as well as your constitutional doctrine of enumerated powers, in which Congress is not only given few but specific powers. As the Supreme Court syllabus in this case states, and I'm looking at it, the framers knew the difference between doing something and doing nothing. They gave Congress the power to regulate commerce, not to compel it. Ignoring this distinction would undermine the principles that the federal government is a government of limited and enumerated powers. But what? The Supreme Court instead told us that Congress has the power to tax and tax and tax and tax until you submit to it. Now, is this all consistent with the founding principles of this country? You know, did those brave patriots who fought in the Revolutionary War and faced estrangement from their families, who endured British cannon fire and musket fire, who weathered freezing winters and blazing summers, march without shoes, sleep without blankets, and suffer with perpetual starvation, all so that Congress could now tax the people to conform to their own behavior that Congress wants? Did the founders who objected to the Stamp Act, the Sugar Act, and the Declaratory Act, which led our great nation to a revolt, risk the charge of treason and put their lives, fortunes, and sacred honor at risk, also that they could replace one king who demanded more from taxation and now replace it with a president who demands more from taxation? No. We are American citizens of a constitutional republic where individual is our birthright, won by our founding generation's sacrifices. We are not and shall never be mere subjects to a government that can tax its way to tyranny. And disturbing as it is, there are many problems with this majority court's rationale. You see, the Obama administration has been confused as to whether or not the monetary penalty for failure to pay is in fact a tax or not. But even if we accept the penalty as a tax, as this court has rewritten the law to be, such a tax is still unconstitutional for many reasons. First, the Constitution lays out three types of permissible taxes. A tax that is not assessed on income, so it is unconstitutional in that regard. This tax is not assessed uniformly or is triggered by economic inactivity, so it's unconstitutional in that regard. And the tax is not apportioned among the states by population, so it is unconstitutional from that regard. Even more important than that, the Constitution does not grant Congress an independent power to tax for any purpose that it wants. Taxing to provide for the general welfare does not mean that there is limitless power of Congress to tax. Rather, it means that tax must be for a national purpose to achieve the ends that are outlined within the enumerated powers. Now, this is not my view only. This was the view of James Madison, who ought to know a little bit about the Constitution, since he is the man most responsible for it. There is nothing about the individual mandate defined as a tax that is sanctioned by the Constitution. But we have strayed far from the Constitution founders. No longer is the ability to tax constrained by the limits imposed by that great document. The growth and power of this government would render it not only unrecognizable, but also repulsive to the founders. Madison and his fellow revolutionaries worried about the growth of government and yielding to liberty. The writings they left for posterity are full of warnings about the fragility of limited government. Madison believed Republican governments would perpetually be on the defensive against the encroachment of aspiring tyrants. John Adams said, democracy never lasts long. And perhaps the most famous quote of all was Ben Franklin at the Constitutional Convention when he said, "We have produced a republic if you can keep it." And now, 225 years later, we have arrived at this moment. Perhaps we should strive then, not perhaps, but we should strive to restore the free society of our founding fathers that they fought for. If liberty then is our goal, the Supreme Court has failed the American people. And so although we come here tonight extremely disappointed that the Supreme Court did not rise to the defense of the Constitution, I can take solace with the knowledge that the people of this country will. See, the Americans of this country revere the Constitution, and they will not let it be trampled upon. They long cherish their liberties. They will not surrender them without a fight. Since the enactment of Obamacare, I have seen the tireless efforts of patriots, both in my district, in the state, across the country, trying to repeal Obamacare. And I am inspired by their passion, by their determination to defend the Constitution. This generation of Americans will not allow history to say that we presided over the demise of the American experiment in limited government. Now, it is true that the struggle against Obamacare has been long and difficult and sometimes met, as today, with disappointing results. But those of us who still believe in our founding principles, I offer some advice from Thomas Jefferson, who said, "The grounds of liberty is to be gained by inches." And so we stand here tonight all together, pledging to work alongside the people of this great nation, who will fight inch by inch in defense of the Constitution, and we will repeal Obamacare. Mr. Speaker, Obamacare must be repealed entirely, because if it is not, the constitutional republic and the safeguards of our natural rights through limited government will be lost. And with that, I yield back.